a WikiVidi documentaries production. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Enjoy. Bobby Moore. Robert Frederick Chelsea Moore OBE was an English professional footballer. He captained West Ham United for more than 10 years, and was captain of the England team that won the 1966 World Cup. He is widely regarded as one of the greatest defenders of all time, and was cited by Pelé as the greatest defender that he had ever played against. Moore is a member of the world team of the 20th century. He won a total of 108 caps for the England team, which at the time of his international retirement in 1973 was a national record. This record was later broken by 125-cap goalkeeper Peter Shilton. Moore's total of 108 caps continued as a record for outfield players until the 28th of March 2009, when David Beckham gained his 109th cap. Moore was made an inaugural inductee of the English Football Hall of Fame in 2002 in recognition of his impact on the English game as a player. The same year he was named in the BBC's list of the 100 Greatest Britons. Early days. Moore was born in Barking, Essex. He attended Westbury Primary School and Tom Hood School, Leytonstone, playing football for both schools. In 1956, Moore joined West Ham United as a player and, after advancing through their youth set-up, he played his first game on the 8th of September 1958 against Manchester United. In putting on the number 6 shirt, he replaced his mentor Malcolm Allison, who was suffering from tuberculosis. Allison never played another first-team game for West Ham nor indeed any other First Division game as Moore became a regular. A composed central defender, Moore was admired for his reading of the game and ability to anticipate opposition movements, thereby distancing himself from the image of the hard-tackling, high-jumping defender. Indeed, Moore's ability to head the ball or keep up with the pace was average at best, but the way he read the game, marshaled his team and timed his tackles marked him out as world-class. Bobby Moore also played county cricket for the Essex youth team alongside fellow West Ham player Geoff Hurst. An England star, a European winner. In 1960, Moore earned a call-up to the England under-23 squad. His form and impact on West Ham as a whole earned him a late call-up to the full England squad by Walter Winterbottom and the Football Association Selection Committee in 1962, when final preparations were being made for the summer's World Cup finals in Chile. Moore was uncapped as he flew to South America with the rest of the squad, but made his debut on the 20th of May 1962 in England's final pre-tournament friendly a 4-0 win over Peru in Lima. Also debuting that day was Tottenham Hotspur defender Maurice Norman. Both proved so impressive that they stayed in the team for the whole of England's participation in the World Cup, which ended in defeat by eventual winners Brazil in the quarter-finals at Vina del Mar. On the 29th of May 1963, 22-year-old Moore captained his country for the first time in just his 12th appearance after the retirement of Johnny Haynes and an injury to his successor, Jimmy Armfield. He was the youngest man ever to captain England at the highest level. England defeated Czechoslovakia 4-2 in the game and Armfield returned to the role of captain afterwards. But new coach Alf Ramsey gave Moore the job permanently during a series of summer friendlies in 1964, organised because England had failed to reach the latter stages of the European Championships. 1964 turned out to be quite an eventful year for Moore, as well as gaining the England captaincy. He lifted the FA Cup as West Ham defeated Preston North End 3-2 in the final at Wembley, courtesy of a last-minute goal from Ronnie Boyce. On a personal level, Moore also was successfully treated for testicular cancer, and was named the Football Writers Association Footballer of the Year. The FA Cup success would become the first of 3 successful Wembley finals in as many years for Moore. In 1965, he lifted the European Cup Winners' Cup after West Ham defeated 1860 Munich 2-0 in the final, with both goals coming from Alan Sealey. By now he was the first-choice captain for England with 30 caps, and around whom Ramsey was building a team to prove correct his prediction that they would win the 1966 World Cup. 1966 had a mixed start for Moore. In January, he scored his first England goal in a 1-1 draw with Poland at Goodison Park, but 2 months later captained West Ham. to the final of the League Cup in its last season before its transfer to Wembley as a one-off final, which they lost 5-3 on aggregate to West Bromwich Albion. For Moore, who had scored in the first leg, and his West Ham teammates Geoff Hurst and Martin Peters, considerable consolation lay ahead. Moore scored his second and ultimately final England goal in a friendly against Norway, 2 weeks before the World Cup would begin. The World Cup. On the verge of his greatest triumph, details were released to the press in early 1966 that Moore wanted to leave West Ham. Moore had let his contract slip to termination, and only after the intervention of Sir Alf Ramsey and realization he was technically ineligible to play, did he re-sign with West Ham to allow him to captain the England team of 1966. Ramsey had summoned West Ham manager Ron Greenwood to England's hotel and told the two of them to resolve their differences and get a contract signed up. Moore was the leader of the World Cup winning side and established himself as a world-class player and sporting icon. With all their games at Wembley, England had got through their group with little trouble. They then beat Argentina in their quarter-final, and Eusebio-led Portugal team in the semi-finals. West Germany awaited in the final. According to Geoff Hurst's autobiography, England fullback George Cohen overheard Ramsey talking to his coaching staff about the possibility of dropping Moore for the final and deploying the more battle-hardened Norman Hunter in his place. However, eventually they settled on keeping the captain in the team. Moore had not been playing badly, nor had he given the impression that he had been distracted by his contract dispute prior to the competition. The only possible explanations were that the Germans had some rather fast attacking players, which could expose Moore's own lack of pace, and that Hunter, who was of a similar age to Moore, but only had 4 caps, was the club partner of Moore's co-defender with England, Jack Charlton. In the final, England went 1-0 down through Helmut Ali, but Moore's awareness and quick thinking helped England to a swift equaliser. He was fouled by Wolfgang Overath midway inside the German half and, rather than remonstrate or head back into defence, he picked himself up quickly while looking ahead and delivered an instant free kick onto Hurst's head, in a movement practiced at West Ham. Hurst scored. The West Ham connection to England's biggest day became stronger when Peters scored to take England 2-1 up, but the Germans equalised in the final minute of normal time through Wolfgang Weber as Moore appealed unsuccessfully for a handball decision to take the match into extra time. Ramsey was convinced the Germans were exhausted, and after Hurst scored a controversial and heavily debated goal, the game looked over. With seconds remaining, and England under the pressure of another German attack, the ball broke to Moore on the edge of his own penalty area. Teammates shouted at Moore to just get rid of the ball, but he calmly picked out the feet of Hurst 40 yards upfield, who scored to bring the score to 4-2. Of many memorable images from that day, one is of Moore wiping his hands clean of mud and sweat on the velvet tablecloth before shaking the hand of Queen Elizabeth II as she presented him with the Jules Rimet Trophy. As an icon, Moore became a national icon as a consequence of England's success, with him and the other 2 West Ham players taking the World Cup around the grounds which West Ham visited during the following domestic season. He was awarded the coveted BBC Sports Personality of the Year title at the end of 1966, the first footballer to do so, and remaining the only one, for a further 24 years. He was also given an OBE in the New Year Honours List. Moore's image and popularity allowed him to start a number of business ventures, including a sports shop next to West Ham's ground, Upton Park, and he also appeared with his wife Tina, along with Peters and his wife Kathy, in a television advertisement for the pub industry, urging people to look in at the local. He continued to play for West Ham and England, earning his 50th cap in a 5-1 win over Wales at the end of 1966 in a home international match which also doubled up as a qualifier for the 1968 European Championships. England ultimately reached the semi-finals where they played Yugoslavia in Florence and lost 1-0. England, as champions, did not have to qualify for the next World Cup, and Moore remained the first name on Ramsey's team sheet, winning his 78th cap prior to the squad's flight to South America for a short period of altitude acclimatization, before going on to the finals in Mexico. 1970. The year 1970 was a bittersweet, mixed and eventful one for Moore. He was again named as captain for the 1970 World Cup. but there was heavy disruption to preparations when an attempt was made to implicate Moore in the theft of a bracelet from a jeweler in Bogotá, Colombia, where England were involved in a warm-up game. A young assistant had claimed that Moore had removed the bracelet from the hotel shop without paying for it. While there was no doubt that Moore had been in the shop, no proof was offered to support the accusations. Moore was arrested and then released. He then travelled with the England team to play another match against Ecuador in Quito. He played, winning his 80th cap, and England were 2-0 victors, but when the team plane stopped back in Colombia on the return to Mexico, Moore was detained and placed under 4 days of house arrest. Diplomatic pressure, plus the obvious weakness of the evidence, eventually saw the case dropped entirely, and an exonerated Moore returned to Mexico to rejoin the squad and prepare for the World Cup. Moore received a guard of honor from his squad when he arrived at the team hotel. Moore went on to play a leading role in England's progress through their group. On the 2nd of June he captained England to a 1-0 victory against Romania. In the second game against favourites Brazil, there was a defining moment for Moore when he tackled Jairzinho with such precision and cleanness that it has been described as the perfect tackle. It continues to be shown on television around the world. Brazil still won the game 1-0, but England progressed through the group. Moore swapped shirts with Pelé after the game. The shirt was displayed at the National Football Museum in Manchester, courtesy of the Priory Collection. A 1-0 win over Czechoslovakia allowed England to finish second in the group and advance to the knockout stage. At the quarter-final stage, a rematch of the 1966 World Cup against West Germany, England took a 2-0 lead, but lost 3-2 in extra time. At the end of the year, Moore was voted runner-up for the 1970 European Footballer of the Year award. Final years at the top. On the 10th of August 1970, Bobby Moore received an anonymous threat to kidnap his wife and hold her to a £10,000 ransom. This caused him to pull out of pre-season friendlies against Bristol City and Bournemouth. However, his services to West Ham were rewarded with a testimonial match against Celtic at the end of 1970. Although Moore was seen as an icon and a perfect influence on the game, he was not without his faults or controversies. On the 7th of January 1971, he and 3 West Ham teammates, Jimmy Greaves, Brian Deere, and Clyde Best, were all fined by West Ham manager Greenwood after going out drinking in a nightclub until the early hours of the morning prior to an FA Cup third-round tie against Blackpool. The nightclub in Blackpool was owned by Moore's friend, boxer Brian London. West Ham lost the tie 4-0. They were all fined a week's wages. Blackpool were the bottom of Division 1 at the time, and were relegated at the end of the season. Coincidentally, Moore was featured on TV as the subject on This Is Your Life the night before. Brian Glanville stated that it was not uncommon for Moore to drink heavily, but he was often seen training with West Ham the next day, working off the alcohol he had consumed the night before. Moore surpassed West Ham's appearances record in 1973 when he played for the club for the 509th time. 3 days earlier, on Valentine's Day 1973, he won his 100th cap for England in a comprehensive 5-0 win over Scotland at Hampden Park. By this stage, only Peters and Alan Ball from the 1966 squad were also still involved with the England team. Later the same year, Moore was exposed defensively by Poland in a qualifier for the 1974 World Cup in Chorzów, deflecting a free kick past goalkeeper Peter Shilton to put the home side ahead, and then losing possession to Włodzimierz Lubański, who scored the second. Moore's form had dipped enough for Ramsey to choose not to select him for the return game at Wembley, which England had to win to qualify. Any other result would send Poland through, being replaced by Norman Hunter in defence and Peters as the skipper for that match. Moore is understood to have asked Ramsey if this meant he was no longer required, to which Ramsey replied, "Of course not. I need you as my captain at the World Cup next year." It never happened, as England could only draw 1-1. During the Wembley match, Hunter attempted to make a tackle, but instead trod on the ball and lost it. A similar error to Moore's lost possession in Chorzów, which allowed Poland to quickly counter-attack and score thanks to Shilton's mistake. Alan Clark equalised with a penalty, but England could not score again as goalkeeper Jan Tomaszewski blocked numerous English chances. Moore later told how he sat alongside Ramsey on the bench and kept urging him to make a substitution, but Ramsey was hesitant to do so. When Kevin Hector finally did come on for Martin Chivers after 85 minutes, Moore could be seen on TV yanking down Hector's tracksuit bottoms while Ramsey sat immobile. Moore, later, said to David Miller, "You could feel the minutes escaping. I said to Alf, we need someone to go through the middle. He just nodded. We couldn't get Kevin out there quick enough. We almost threw him onto the pitch." Hunter was in an inconsolable state as he was led off the pitch by Harold Shepherdson, and by Moore, whose place in the side he had taken. England's failure to qualify for the 1974 FIFA World Cup signalled the end of Ramsey's reign as national team manager, as he was sacked 6 months later. Moore won his 108th and final cap in the next game, a 1-0 friendly defeat to Italy on the 14th of November 1973. He became England's most capped player, beating Bobby Charlton's record by 2 appearances, and equalled Billy Wright's record of 90 appearances as captain. Peter Shilton, David Beckham, and Steven Gerrard have since overtaken the caps record, but the joint captaincy record remains. Brought to you by WikiVidi Documentaries. Would you like to know more?